Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Warning. Hector Nicholson was cleaning his service pistol when he heard the front door slam. The sound echoed through their suburban home like a gunshot, sharp and urgent. He'd been expecting Marcia to return from her book club, but the footsteps racing up the stairs were too light, too frantic. "Emma," he called, setting down his weapon. His 7-year-old daughter appeared in the doorway, and Hector's blood ran cold. Emma's lip was split and swollen, dried blood crusted at the corner. Her knees were scraped raw through torn jeans, dirt and gravel embedded in the wounds. But it was her eyes that stopped him, wide with terror, darting constantly toward the windows. "Daddy," she whispered, her small voice trembling. "We can't sleep here tonight." Hector knelt beside her, his trained eyes cataloging every injury. Someone had hurt his little girl. The rage that built in his chest was controlled, methodical, the same cold fury that had made him one of the Army's most effective interrogators. "Who did this to you, sweetheart?" Emma's hands shook as she pressed something into his palm. "They said they'd come after me if I told. But I had to tell you, Daddy. They said..." Her voice broke. "They said they'd hurt me worse if you didn't do what they wanted." Hector unfolded the crumpled note. 3 names were scrawled in harsh block letters: Vincent Bright, Marcia Nicholson, Julius Flynn. Below them, an address he didn't recognize and a time: 11 p.m. tonight. "Come alone." The first name hit him like a physical blow. Vincent Bright, Marcia's fitness trainer. The man who'd been coming to their house 3 times a week for the past 6 months, supposedly helping his wife get back in shape after Emma's birth complications. Hector had noticed the way Vincent looked at Marcia, but he'd trusted his wife. The second name made his vision blur with rage. His own wife. His partner of 9 years, mother of his child. Julius Flynn he didn't recognize, but that would change soon. "Emma, baby, I need you to tell me exactly what happened." Through halting words and tears, the story emerged. Emma had been walking home from her friend's house when a black SUV pulled up. 2 men had gotten out, one she recognized as Mommy's friend Vincent, and another she'd never seen. They grabbed her, shoved her into the vehicle. "Vincent said Mommy told him it was okay," Emma whispered. "He said you'd been bad and needed to learn a lesson. Well, I tried to run. The other man pushed me down. That's when I got hurt." "What else did they say?" "Vincent said tonight you were going to give them something important, and then we could all be a family again. But different," he said. Emma's voice dropped to barely audible. "He said soon Mommy wouldn't need you anymore." Hector pulled his daughter close, feeling her small body shake against his chest. Over her head, he stared at the names on the paper. His mind was already working, processing, planning. These people had made 2 critical mistakes. They'd hurt his child, and they'd underestimated who they were dealing with. "Where's Mommy now?" he asked. "She dropped me off and left again. Said she had an emergency at work." Hector's jaw tightened. Marcia worked part-time at a dental office that closed at 6. It was nearly 8 now. "Emma, I need you to pack a bag. Just overnight things. We're going to visit Uncle Tyler." Tyler Irwin wasn't really Emma's uncle, but he was the closest thing Hector had to family. Former special forces like Hector, Tyler ran a private security company and lived in a fortress-like compound 20 miles outside the city. If anyone could keep Emma safe while Hector handled this situation, it was Tyler. As Emma gathered her things, Hector studied the note again. The handwriting was crude, obviously disguised, but there were tells, the way the T tonight curved, the pressure variations that suggested someone trying to write with their non-dominant hand. Amateur hour. He photographed the note with his phone, then moved to his home office. The room looked like any other suburban dad's workspace, but Hector's past wasn't quite so mundane. Before Emma was born, before he'd settled into domestic life, Hector Nicholson had been Staff Sergeant Hector Nicholson, psychological operations specialist with the 4th Infantry Division. He'd spent 3 tours in Afghanistan, perfecting the art of breaking enemies without leaving a mark. Some skills never got rusty. From a hidden compartment behind his file cabinet, Hector retrieved items he'd hoped never to need again. surveillance equipment, encrypted communications gear, and detailed psychological profiles he'd compiled on everyone in his life, including his wife. Trust but verify. It had kept him alive overseas, and apparently, he'd need it at home too. 20 minutes later, he was loading Emma into his truck. She clutched her stuffed rabbit, still glancing nervously at every shadow. "Daddy, are you going to hurt the bad man?" Hector met his daughter's eyes in the rearview mirror. Even at 7, Emma was perceptive. She'd inherited her mother's beauty, but her father's steel. Sometimes, sweetheart, people make choices that have consequences. Tonight, some people are going to learn about consequences. Will mommy be in trouble too? The question pierced him more than any physical wound could have. Emma loved her mother, despite what Marcia had apparently become. But Hector's loyalty had limits, and those limits ended where his daughter's safety began. "We'll see, baby. We'll see." Chapter 2. The Revelation. Tyler Irwin's compound sat on 40 acres of rolling hills, surrounded by motion sensors and security cameras. To most visitors, it looked like an eccentric millionaire's ranch. To those who knew Tyler's background, it was what it actually was, a hardened defensive position that could withstand anything short of military assault. Tyler met them at the gate, 6'4", built like a linebacker, with the kind of scars that came from real combat, not gym accidents. He took one look at Emma's injuries, and his face went granite hard. "How many?" he asked simply. "At least 3, possibly more." Hector handed Tyler the note. "I need you to keep Emma safe while I handle this." Tyler scanned the paper, his expression darkening. "Vincent Bright. I know that name." "You do." "Private investigator. Operates out of the city. Specializes in marital situations. Usually works for wives looking to maximize divorce settlements." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Marcia wasn't just having an affair. She was building a case. The fitness sessions, the late nights, the gradual emotional distance. She'd been documenting everything, probably claiming abuse or neglect, setting up for a divorce that would leave Hector with nothing. But why involve Emma? Why threaten a child? "There's more," Tyler continued, leading them into his home office. "I ran some background checks on your wife a few months ago. You never asked, but old habits." Hector felt his blood chill. "What did you find?" Tyler pulled up a file on his computer. "Marcia Steele. Her maiden name has quite a history. 2 previous marriages, both ended in acrimonious divorces. Both ex-husbands filed complaints about manipulation, lies, stolen assets. In the second case, her husband was a wealthy contractor named David Steele." "Steele?" She kept his name. "Gets better." David Steele died in a car accident 3 months after their divorce was finalized. Single car crash, late at night. Investigators found alcohol in his system, but his friend swore he never drank and drove. Emma had fallen asleep on Tyler's couch, exhausted by trauma and fear. Hector stared at his daughter's peaceful face and felt something cold settle in his chest. What about Julius Flynn? That took longer to track down. Julius Flynn is Vincent Bright's brother-in-law, and he's got quite a resume. Former pharmaceutical tech, fired for selling controlled substances. Arrest for assault, intimidation, extortion. Nothing that stuck, but the pattern's clear. Hector absorbed this information with the detached calm of his military training. His wife was a predator who'd been running long cons for years. She'd married him not for love, but because a military man with PTSD and a good life insurance policy made an ideal target. The fitness trainer was her attack dog, and Julius Flynn was probably their muscle, the one who'd hurt Emma. "How long do you think this has been planned?" Tyler pulled up more files. "I'd guess from the beginning. Look at this. Vincent Bright's been operating in this area for 2 years. His client list reads like a who's who of divorced wives with substantial settlements. And they all have one thing in common. Their ex-husbands either died or disappeared shortly after the divorces were finalized. Disappeared, car accidents, suicides, overdoses. All ruled accidental or self-inflicted. But the pattern, Tyler shook his head. These people are killing machines with legal cover. Hector checked his watch. 9:30 p.m. He had 90 minutes before the meeting. "I need gear," he said simply. Tyler nodded and led him to another room, this one lined with weapons lockers and surveillance equipment. Hector selected items with the precision of a craftsman choosing tools: night vision goggles, tactical communications gear, zip ties, a suppressed pistol, and something Tyler called the Persuader, a device that delivered controlled electrical shocks. "What's the play?" Tyler asked. "Simple. They want to meet? We'll meet. But not the way they expect." Hector's phone buzzed. A text from Marcia. "Where are you? Emma said you took her somewhere. We need to talk." He showed Tyler the message. His old teammate's smile was predatory. "She doesn't know that you know," Tyler observed. "Not yet. But she's about to learn something about me she never suspected." Hector typed back. "Emma's safe with friends. Had to run an errand. Be home late." The reply came quickly. "Please hurry. I'm worried about you." Worried about her timeline, more like, Tyler muttered. Hector spent the next hour preparing, his mind sharp and focused. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting Emma and ensuring these predators never hurt another family. At 10:45 p.m., he drove toward the address on the note. But he wasn't going alone, and he wasn't going unprepared. Tyler followed in a separate vehicle, monitoring everything through encrypted comms. The address led to an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district, the kind of place where screams wouldn't carry and bodies could disappear. Amateur hour indeed. Hector parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot, night vision revealing the tactical situation. 1 entrance, 2 windows, no visible rear exit. A black SUV, probably the one that had taken Emma, sat in the shadows. Inside the warehouse, 3 heat signatures waited. They'd chosen the perfect place for a murder. Unfortunately for them, they'd invited the wrong victim. "Tyler, you in position?" "Roger. Building surrounded. No one gets out." Hector checked his weapons one last time. His daughter's blood was still under his fingernails, and that was all the motivation he needed. Time to introduce Vincent Bright and his friends to consequences. Chapter 3. The Hunter's Moon. Hector approached the warehouse like a wraith, every sense heightened. Through his comms, Tyler's voice provided tactical updates. 3 inside, still stationary. No additional vehicles in the area. "You're clear for approach." The front door hung slightly ajar, obviously intentional. They wanted him to enter, probably expecting him to stumble in like a desperate, frightened husband. Instead, Hector found a maintenance ladder on the building's side and climbed to a skylight. Through the dirty glass, he could see the setup below. Vincent Bright stood near a makeshift table, checking his phone repeatedly. The man was exactly as Hector remembered, tall, lean, with the kind of sculpted physique that came from vanity rather than function. But tonight, Vincent's usual cocky demeanor seemed strained. Julius Flynn was positioned by the door, a mountain of muscle with prison tattoos covering his arms. The third figure made Hector's blood freeze. Marcia. His wife sat in a chair center stage, her hands apparently bound behind her back, a gag across her mouth. Her eyes were wide with terror, tears streaming down her face. To any observer, she looked like a victim. But Hector noticed what others wouldn't. The expensive jewelry she wore, the fresh manicure, the fact that her bonds were loose enough that she could slip them if needed. This was theater designed to make him rush in without thinking. "Change of plan," he whispered into his comm, "the wife's in on it." "This is an ambush." Tyler's voice crackled back. "Copy that. How do you want to play it?" Hector studied the scene more carefully. No weapons visible, but that didn't mean they weren't armed. Vincent kept checking his phone, probably waiting for Hector's approach. Julius looked bored, like this was routine. "Give me 2 minutes, then cut the power to the building." Hector positioned himself above Julius Flynn and waited. At exactly 11 p.m., the warehouse plunged into darkness. "What the hell?" Vincent's voice carried clearly in the sudden silence. "Power's out," Julius responded, his voice calm. "Probably just a grid failure." "Turn on the emergency lights," Vincent snapped. But Hector was already moving. He dropped through the skylight as silently as falling snow, landing behind Julius before the man could react. The Persuader touched Julius's neck, and the giant crumpled without a sound. "Julius?" Vincent called. "Julius, where are you?" Marcia made muffled sounds through her gag. but they sounded more frustrated than frightened. In the darkness, Hector could see Vincent fumbling for something, probably a weapon. "Hello, Vincent," Hector said, his voice cutting through the darkness like a blade. Vincent spun toward the sound, a pistol now visible in his hands. "Hector? Thank God you're here. They have Marcia. We need to save it." Hector's voice was conversational, almost casual. "I know what this is." The silence stretched taut. Finally, Vincent's facade cracked. "You know nothing," Vincent snarled, raising his weapon. "You stupid grunt. You never deserved her." "Tyler, lights," Hector commanded. Emergency floodlights blazed to life, revealing the true situation. Julius Flynn lay unconscious, zip-tied and gagged. Vincent squinted in the sudden brightness, his pistol wavering. And Marcia sat in her chair, no longer playing the victim. Her bonds had been slipped, her gag pulled down. She was reaching for something hidden beneath the table. "Really, Marcia?" Hector asked, stepping into view. "A knife? After everything we've been through?" His wife froze, her hand inches from the weapon. In the harsh light, her true nature was finally visible. Cold calculation where warmth used to be, predatory intelligence instead of love. "You don't understand," she began, but Hector cut her off. "I understand perfectly. Vincent's your attack dog. Julius is your muscle. And I was supposed to be your next victim." He gestured to the warehouse around them. "Isolated location, no witnesses. Let me guess. I was going to resist kidnapping, and in the struggle I'd be killed. Tragic accident." Vincent's grip on his pistol tightened. "You're smarter than we gave you credit for. Smart enough to know you've done this before. David Steele wasn't your first victim, was he, Marcia? How many husbands have you buried?" "Enough," Marcia snapped, abandoning all pretense. "Enough pathetic men who thought they deserved me. You were just another Mark, Hector, another lonely soldier who needed someone to take care of him." The words should have hurt, but they only crystallized Hector's resolve. "And Emma? What was the plan for my daughter?" "Accidents happen to children too," Vincent said with a shrug. "Especially traumatized kids whose fathers died violently." That was all Hector needed to hear. He moved with the fluid precision of his military training. Vincent's gun was trained on where Hector had been standing, not where he was moving. The suppressed pistol in Hector's hand coughed once, and Vincent's weapon clattered to the floor along with two of his fingers. Vincent's scream echoed through the warehouse as he collapsed, clutching his ruined hand. "You shot him," Marcia gasped, genuine shock replacing her calculated coldness. "I've barely started," Hector replied, securing Vincent's weapon. "Tyler, how are we looking outside?" "All clear. No one's coming to rescue them." Hector zip-tied Vincent's good hand to a structural support beam, then turned his attention to his wife. Marcia had finally understood that her carefully laid plan had become her trap. "Hector, please," she began, falling back on old manipulation tactics. "I know how this looks, but you don't understand the whole situation. Vincent forced me." "Stop." Hector's voice was flat, emotionless. "I've read your file, Marcia. I know about your previous husbands. I know about the insurance policies, the convenient accidents. I know Emma was never safe with you. She's my daughter too. A daughter you put in harm's way to manipulate me. A daughter you were willing to orphan for money." Julius Flynn was beginning to stir. Hector administered another touch of the persuader, keeping him unconscious. "Here's what's going to happen," Hector continued, his voice carrying the authority of command. "You're going to tell me about every other family you've destroyed, every husband you've killed, every child you've orphaned, and then we're going to discuss your future." Vincent whimpered through his pain. "You can't do this. This is kidnapping, assault." "No," Hector corrected. "This is justice. You made the mistake of threatening my daughter. There are no rules now." Marcia seemed to finally grasp the gravity of her situation. The man she'd married, the gentle father she'd manipulated for 2 years, was gone. In his place stood someone far more dangerous, someone whose protection of his child knew no limits. "What do you want?" she whispered. Hector smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I want you to understand that you picked the wrong family to hunt. And I want you to understand that everything you've built, everyone you've corrupted, every plan you've made, it all ends tonight." The real interrogation was about to begin. Chapter 4. The Soldier's Creed. The abandoned warehouse became Hector's interrogation theater, a space where he could apply skills honed in Afghanistan's most dangerous provinces. But this time, he wasn't extracting information about enemy positions or bomb-making facilities. This time, he was unraveling a conspiracy that had claimed multiple lives and nearly destroyed his family. Vincent Bright hung from the structural beam by his zip-tied wrist, his injured hand wrapped in a makeshift bandage that Hector had applied with clinical precision. Not from mercy, but from practicality. Dead men couldn't provide information. "Let's start with something simple," Hector said, consulting notes he'd made on his phone. "David Steele. How did you kill him?" Vincent's face had gone gray with pain and shock. "I don't know what you're talking about." The persuader touched Vincent's ribs, and his body convulsed. The scream that followed was raw and primal. "Wrong answer. Tyler, status report. All quiet out here," came the reply through Hector's earpiece. "No police, no backup, no witnesses. You got all night." Marcia watched from her chair, no longer bound but knowing better than to run. Hector had made it clear that any movement would be her last. "David Steele," Hector repeated, "Marcia's second husband. Died 3 months after their divorce. Single car accident. Blood alcohol above the legal limit." "That wasn't us," Marcia protested. "David really was an alcoholic. Shut up." Hector's tone carried the weight of absolute authority. "Vincent, I'm going to ask again. How did you kill David Steele?" This time, Vincent's resolve cracked slightly. "We didn't kill him directly." "Explain." "Julius has connections. People who can alter blood tests. Post-mortem toxicology." Hector processed this information with the methodical patience of a professional interrogator. "So you staged the accident, then had the blood work falsified to show alcohol." Vincent nodded miserably. "How many others?" "I invoke my right to remain silent." Hector almost smiled. "Vincent, you seem to think this is a legal proceeding. It's not. This is a conversation between a father and the people who hurt his daughter. Constitutional rights don't apply here." The persuader made contact again, and Vincent's body arched in agony. "6, he gasped when the current stopped. 6 others over the past 5 years. Marcia's face went white. Even she hadn't known the full extent of Vincent's operation. "Names," Hector demanded. As Vincent recited the list, Hector cross-referenced each name with missing persons reports and suspicious deaths he'd accessed through Tyler's security firm database. The pattern was clear and horrifying. Marcia would marry wealthy, isolated men, typically veterans or divorced professionals. Vincent would document evidence of abuse or psychological instability. Then, when the divorce proceedings began, the husband would suffer a convenient accident. "What about the children?" Hector asked. "Most of them didn't have kids," Vincent replied weakly. "When they did, accidents happened." "How many children have you killed?" Vincent's silence stretched until Hector reached for the persuader again. 3, Vincent whispered. 3 kids who might have talked. Made it look like accidents or suicides. The warehouse fell silent except for Vincent's labored breathing. Julius Flynn remained unconscious, periodically twitching as the electrical shock wore off. And Marcia sat frozen, finally understanding the monster she'd allied herself with. "Hector," she began carefully, "I didn't know about the children. Vincent never told me. But you suspected." Hector's voice was conversational, almost gentle. "When your first husband's daughter Emma died in that swimming pool accident. When David Steele's son was found hanging in his college dorm room. You suspected, but you didn't care. I thought they were just coincidences." "No, you didn't." Hector pulled up photos on his phone. Crime scene images Tyler had acquired through his contacts. "You knew. You've always known. You just decided that other people's children were acceptable losses." He showed her the photos. A 7-year-old girl at the bottom of a swimming pool, a 19-year-old boy in a dorm room, a 10-year-old child found dead for what appeared to be accidental poisoning. Each death had occurred within months of their father's suspicious accidents. "My daughter could have been next," Hector continued. "In fact, she was supposed to be next, wasn't she? After tonight, after you killed me, Emma would have had an accident too. Can't leave witnesses." Marcia's composure finally cracked completely. Tears streamed down her face, but Hector felt no sympathy. She was crying for herself, not for the children she'd helped murder. "Please," she sobbed. "I'll do anything. I'll confess. I'll testify against Vincent. You'll what? Serve 20 years in minimum security and get out with good behavior." Hector shook his head. "That's not justice for those children." Julius Flynn began to stir again. This time, Hector let him wake up. "Julius," Hector said conversationally, "good to finally meet you. I understand you're the one who grabbed my daughter today." Julius's eyes focused slowly, taking in the scene. Vincent hanging from the beam, Marcia crying in her chair, Hector standing calmly with a weapon in his hand. "You're making a big mistake," Julius growled. "You have no idea who you're messing with. Enlighten me. I've got connections. Police, prosecutors, judges. You kill us, and they'll hunt you down." Hector nodded thoughtfully. "Interesting. Tyler, did you get that confession?" "Every word. Also got traces running on Julius's phone records. Amazing how many law enforcement officials he's been in contact with." Julius's face went pale as he realized his mistake. "See, Julius, that's the difference between professionals and amateurs," Hector explained. "Professionals gather intelligence before making threats. For instance, I know you've been paying off Detective Charles Hudson to look the other way on suspicious deaths. I know you've got compromising material on Judge Beatrice Hoffman. And I know you've been using former police chief Mario Pena's gambling debts to ensure certain evidence disappears. How do you? Because I'm very good at my job. And my job, right now, is protecting my daughter from people like you." Hector checked his watch. 1:30 a.m. Emma would be sleeping safely at Tyler's compound, probably dreaming of better things than the nightmare her mother had planned for her. "Here's what's going to happen," Hector announced. "Vincent, you're going to provide me with detailed information about every corrupt official in your network. Names, dates, amounts paid, services provided. Julius, you're going to give me access to whatever leverage you have on these people. And Marcia," he turned to his wife, the woman who'd shared his bed while planning his murder. "Marcia, you're going to disappear." "What do you mean?" "I mean you're going to vanish from Emma's life completely. No custody battles, no visitation rights, no contact of any kind. Because if you ever try to see my daughter again, if you ever try to hurt another family, if you ever surface anywhere near my life, well, let's just say that what happened to your previous husbands will seem gentle by comparison." The warehouse fell silent as the three conspirators absorbed their fate. They'd planned to be predators, but they'd stumbled into the territory of an apex predator. And now they would learn what real consequences looked like. Chapter 5. The Network Falls. Dawn was breaking over the city as Hector completed his interrogation. Vincent Bright hung unconscious from a beam, his body unable to endure any more of Hector's persuasion. Julius Flynn sat slumped against a wall, his earlier bravado replaced by broken resignation. And Marcia remained in her chair, staring at the floor with the hollow eyes of someone whose world had completely collapsed. The information Hector had extracted painted a picture of corruption that stretched through multiple law enforcement agencies, the court system, and even the medical examiner's office. Vincent's operation hadn't just been killing isolated husbands. They'd been running a criminal enterprise that infected the entire justice system. "Tyler, you getting all this?" Hector asked, reviewing the notes on his phone. "Every detail. I've already started cross-referencing with cases in our database." "This is bigger than we thought. Hector, these people have been operating for over a decade." Hector nodded grimly. Vincent and Julius hadn't just been serial killers. They'd been the heads of a conspiracy that had perverted justice for years. The corrupt officials they'd compromised had allowed dozens of cases to be buried, evidence to disappear, witnesses to be silenced. "Julius," Hector said, approaching the broken man, "I need access to your insurance files." "What insurance files?" The persuader touched Julius's shoulder briefly, just enough to remind him of the consequences of lying. "Fine. Jesus," Julius gasped. "There's a safety deposit box. Bank of America on 5th Street. Box 247. The key's in my wallet." Hector found the wallet and extracted a small key. "What's in the box?" Photos, recordings, financial records. Everything we had on the people we were paying off. Vincent insisted on keeping insurance in case anyone tried to turn on us. Smart man. Unfortunately for him, he never planned for this scenario. Hector turned to Marcia, who had been silent for the past hour. Your turn, wife. I need to know about the money. What money? The money you've been stealing from your dead husbands. The life insurance payouts, the asset transfers, the mysterious account movements. Where is it all? Marcia looked up with red-rimmed eyes. Offshore accounts. Cayman Islands, mostly. Some in Switzerland. Account numbers. I can't remember all of them. Hector sighed and reached for the persuader. Wait. Marcia flinched. There's a notebook. In our house, hidden behind a false back in my jewelry box. Everything's written down there. Good. Tyler, you copy that. Already on it. I'll have a team at the house within the hour. The sun was fully up now, streaming through the warehouse windows and illuminating the destruction of 3 lives. But Hector felt no satisfaction, only grim determination. Justice wasn't about revenge. It was about ensuring these predators could never hurt another family. Hector, Vincent's voice was barely a whisper. He'd regained consciousness but could barely lift his head. What are you going to do with us? That depends, Hector replied. Are you familiar with the concept of mutually assured destruction? Vincent's face showed confusion through his pain. It's a military doctrine, Hector explained. The idea that if everyone has the power to destroy everyone else, no one will risk starting a war. I'm about to apply that principle to your situation. He pulled out his phone and started a video recording, pointing it at Vincent. State your name for the record. Vincent Bright. And your profession? Private investigator. And are you also a serial killer? Vincent's eyes darted desperately around the room, looking for escape that didn't exist. I invoke my right to remain silent. Vincent, I want you to understand something. This warehouse has no soundproofing. Your screams have been carrying for blocks. But more importantly, it has excellent acoustics for recording confessions. Hector played back a snippet of audio on his phone. Vincent's earlier admission about the 6 murdered husbands, clear as crystal. Now, you can either provide a complete confession on video, naming all your accomplices and detailing all your crimes, or I can release this audio to every news outlet in the state. Either way, the world's going to know what you are. The question is whether you want to control the narrative. Vincent stared at the phone with the expression of a man watching his own execution. If I confess, what happens to me? You'll be arrested, tried, and convicted. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison, but you'll be alive. Your family will know the truth, but they'll be able to visit you. And if I don't? Hector's smile was cold as Arctic wind. Then you disappear, and your family spend the rest of their lives wondering what happened to you. The choice was no choice at all. Over the next hour, Vincent provided a complete video confession detailing a decade of murders, corruption, and conspiracy. Julius followed suit, his broken spirit unable to resist any longer. Marcia's confession was the most damning of all. She detailed not just her role in the recent crimes, but her entire history of marrying and murdering wealthy men. The cold calculation in her voice, as she described viewing potential husbands as marks and their children as obstacles, was chilling even to Hector's hardened sensibilities. That's enough, Hector finally said, stopping the recording. Tyler, how long until the cavalry arrives? 20 minutes. FBI task force, based on the evidence we've compiled. Clean arrest by the book. Hector nodded. He'd called in favors with federal contacts, ensuring that none of the corrupted local officials would be involved in the arrest. The FBI team would find 3 suspects ready for transport, along with enough evidence to dismantle the entire conspiracy. What about us? Marcia asked desperately. What's going to happen to us? You're going to face justice, Hector replied simply. Real justice, not the perverted version you've been manipulating for years. And you? What about what you did here tonight? Hector looked around the warehouse, at the evidence of his interrogation. By the time the FBI arrived, any signs of his methods would be gone. Vincent and Julius's injuries would be attributed to resistance during their apprehension, and their confessions would be presented as the result of guilt and fear, not physical coercion. I'm going home to my daughter, Hector said. I'm going to make her breakfast, help her with her homework, and remind her that there are still good people in the world who will protect her from monsters. He gathered his equipment methodically, leaving no trace of his presence. Tyler's team would handle the cleanup, ensuring that when the FBI arrived, they'd find nothing but 3 criminals ready for arrest. As Hector prepared to leave, Marcia called out one last time. Hector, please. I know I don't deserve it, but will you tell Emma that I loved her? That everything I did was for her future? Hector paused at the warehouse door, not turning around. No, he said simply, because it wasn't true, and my daughter deserves better than lies. He walked out into the morning sun, leaving his old life behind forever. Chapter 6, The Cleansing. Hector drove through the early morning streets with the windows down, letting the cool air wash away the stench of betrayal and violence. His phone buzzed constantly. Text messages from Marcia's number, probably automated messages she'd scheduled to maintain her facade of normalcy. He turned off the phone and focused on the road ahead. Tyler's compound came into view as the sun climbed higher, its security gates and camera towers looking more welcoming than forbidding. Emma would be waking up soon, probably confused about why she'd spent the night away from home. Hector needed to be there when she woke up, needed to begin the careful process of helping her understand that her world had changed forever. The front gate recognized his vehicle and opened silently. Tyler met him in the driveway, his expression grim but satisfied. It's done, Tyler asked. It's done. FBI should have them in custody within the hour. Good. Emma's still sleeping, but she was asking for you earlier. Kid's tough, but she's scared. Hector nodded, feeling the weight of single parenthood settling on his shoulders. Emma would have questions he wasn't sure how to answer. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that her mother was a monster? How do you help a child understand that the woman who read her bedtime stories was also planning her death? Any word on the safety deposit box? Hector asked. Already cleared it out. You're not going to believe what was in there. Tyler led him into the house, past the sleeping area where Emma was curled up with her stuffed rabbit. His office was spread with documents, photographs, and recording equipment. Vincent wasn't just insurance fraud, Tyler explained, pulling up files on his computer. The guy was running a full-scale blackmail operation. Look at this. The screen showed photographs of prominent city officials in compromising situations. Mayor Alberto Sutton accepting envelopes of cash from Julius Flynn, Police Commissioner Andre Childs destroying evidence in a department storage room, District Attorney Shane Sanders meeting with known criminals in hotel rooms. How deep does this go? Hector asked. City government, county courts, state police. Vincent had dirt on everyone from traffic cops to state senators. And it gets worse. Tyler pulled up audio files. The first was a recording of Mayor Sutton authorizing the destruction of evidence in a child murder case. The second captured Police Commissioner Childs ordering subordinates to falsify reports. The third was District Attorney Sanders explicitly discussing which cases to throw in exchange for campaign contributions. Jesus, Hector breathed. This isn't just corruption. This is a complete breakdown of the justice system. It gets worse. Vincent kept detailed records of every case they interfered with. Murders, rapes, child abuse cases, all buried or botched deliberately. We're talking about hundreds of victims who never got justice. Hector studied the files with growing horror. Vincent and Julius hadn't just been serial killers. They'd been a linchpin in a system that allowed all kinds of predators to operate freely. Every corrupt official they'd compromised had enabled dozens of other crimes. What's our play? Hector asked. I've already copied everything to encrypted drives. 3 sets. One goes to the FBI team handling the arrests, one goes to the state attorney general's office, and one goes to the media. By tonight, this whole house of cards comes down. A soft voice interrupted their conversation. Daddy. Emma stood in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She looked small and vulnerable in her pajamas, a living reminder of what Hector had been fighting to protect. Hey, sweetheart, Hector said, kneeling down to her level. How did you sleep? Okay, I guess. Uncle Tyler has really good security. Emma's attempt at humor didn't hide the fear in her eyes. Daddy, are the bad men gone? Hector pulled his daughter into a hug, feeling her small body trembling against his chest. Yes, baby. They can't hurt you anymore. What about Mommy? Is she okay? The question he'd been dreading. Hector met Tyler's eyes over Emma's head, seeing his own uncertainty reflected there. Emma, we need to talk about some things. Some very important things. Over the next hour, Hector explained what he could in terms of his 7-year-old could understand. Mommy had been making bad choices. She'd been working with people who wanted to hurt their family. She wouldn't be coming home anymore. Emma absorbed the information with the resilience of childhood, asking practical questions that cut straight to the heart of the matter. Would she still go to school? Will they keep their house? Would she see her friends again? We might need to move, Hector admitted. Somewhere safer, where we can start fresh. Will you stay with me? Always, sweetheart. I will always stay with you. Tyler's phone buzzed. He checked it and nodded to Hector. FBI's got them. Clean arrest. No resistance. Vincent and Julius are in federal custody. Marsh is being processed at the county facility. What happens now? Emma asked. Now we rebuild, Hector said simply. We find a new place to live, maybe somewhere with a better school district. We make new friends. We learn to trust people again. Will Mommy go to jail? Yes, baby. She will. Good, Emma said with startling firmness. She hurt people. People who hurt people should go to jail. Hector was struck by his daughter's clarity. At 7 years old, Emma understood justice better than the adults who'd perverted it for their own gain. Daddy, can I ask you something? Anything. Last night, when you went to stop the bad men, did you hurt them? Hector considered his answer carefully. Emma deserved honesty, but she also deserved to maintain some faith in goodness. I did what I had to do to protect you, he said finally. Sometimes, when people are trying to hurt your family, you have to be stronger than they are. Were you scared? No, sweetheart. I wasn't scared, because protecting you is the most important thing in the world to me. Emma nodded solemnly, as if filing this information away for future reference. Tyler's computer chimed with incoming messages. The FBI task force was reporting successful raids on 14 locations based on the intelligence from Vincent's files. Corrupt officials were being arrested across the city. Evidence that had been buried for years was being recovered and processed. It's like watching dominoes fall, Tyler observed. 15 years of corruption unraveling in one morning. What about the victims' families? Hector asked. The people who never got justice? That's the beautiful part. With Vincent's records and the recovered evidence, dozens of cases can be reopened. Families who thought their loved ones' killers would never be caught are going to get closure. Hector felt a grim satisfaction. Emma's ordeal had led to justice for hundreds of victims. Her courage in delivering that note, despite her terror, had potentially saved countless future victims. We should probably get moving, Tyler said. Media is going to be all over this story. You don't want to be anywhere near the spotlight. Hector nodded. He'd already decided they needed to disappear for a while, at least until the trials were over and the media circus died down. Tyler had contacts who could provide new identities, safe houses, complete fresh starts. Where do you want to go? He asked Emma. Somewhere with mountains, she said immediately. And snow. I want to learn to ski. Mountains and snow it is. As they prepared to leave Tyler's compound, Hector's phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Mr. Nicholson? This is Special Agent Rebecca Chandler, FBI. I wanted to thank you personally for your assistance in this case. I'm not sure what you mean. The evidence packages that were delivered to our field office this morning. The detailed intelligence that allowed us to roll up this entire network. We know it came from you. Hector remained silent. Mr. Nicholson, I want you to know that what happened to your daughter, what was planned for your family, we understand why you did what you did. Officially, our investigation shows that you've been fully cooperative with federal authorities. Unofficially, I want you to know that you've probably saved dozens of lives. Thank you, Agent Chandler. Take care of that little girl, Mr. Nicholson, and know that the people who hurt her will never hurt anyone again. As Hector ended the call, he felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. Justice had been served, not in the corrupted courts that Vincent and Julius had manipulated, but in the pure, clean way that protected the innocent and punished the guilty. Emma tugged on his hand. Daddy, are you ready to go see the mountains? I'm ready, sweetheart. Let's go home. Chapter 7. The Reckoning. 6 months later, Hector and Emma were living in a cabin outside Aspen, Colorado, under the names Thomas and Sarah Mitchell. The mountains Emma had dreamed of rose majestically around their new home, and she'd taken to skiing with the fearless enthusiasm that only children possess. The terror in her eyes had faded, replaced by the confidence that came from knowing she was truly safe. Hector worked as a security consultant for Tyler's firm, which had expanded operations to Colorado after the success of the Vincent Bright case. Most of his work was legitimate, protecting executives, investigating corporate espionage, consulting on facility security. But occasionally, cases came across his desk that required more specialized attention. Today was one of those days. "We've got a problem," Tyler said over their encrypted video call. "Marcia's trial is starting next week, and her defense team is making noise about her confession being coerced." Hector looked up from where he was helping Emma with her homework. "What kind of noise?" "They're claiming she was intimidated into confessing. They want to exclude the video evidence and are demanding an investigation into how she was arrested. Any chance they can make it stick?" "Minimal. The FBI handled the arrest by the book, and the physical evidence is overwhelming. But her lawyer is smart. Richard Snyder, one of those high-profile defense attorneys who specialize in getting guilty people off on technicalities." Emma finished her math problems and looked up. "Daddy, is someone trying to help the bad lady?" Even at 7, Emma understood more about the legal system than most adults. The months of therapy had helped her process her trauma, but they'd also given her a remarkably clear understanding of justice and consequences. "Some people think everyone deserves a defense, even bad people," Hector explained. "But that doesn't mean the bad people will get away with what they did." "Good," Emma said firmly. "She should stay in jail forever." Tyler's voice continued from the screen. "There's something else. Marcia's been getting visits from someone unexpected." "Who?" "Her sister, Carrie Herring. Turns out Marcia has family we didn't know about." Hector felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Colorado winter. "What kind of family?" "The kind that might want to continue the family business. Carrie Herring has a record, fraud, identity theft, suspected in at least 2 insurance scams. And she's been very interested in Marcia's offshore accounts." "You think she's planning something?" "I think she's been studying Marcia's operation and wants to pick up where her sister left off. But there's a complication." Tyler's expression grew grim. "Carrie's been asking questions about Emma. Specifically, she's been asking about custody rights, next of kin status, life insurance beneficiaries." The temperature in the cabin seemed to drop 10 degrees. Emma, sensitive to her father's moods, looked up from her homework with concern. "Daddy, what's wrong?" "Nothing, sweetheart. Just some business stuff. Why don't you go practice piano for a bit?" Emma nodded and moved to the small, upright piano they'd bought for the cabin. As her fingers began picking out a simple melody, Hector leaned closer to his laptop screen. "Tell me everything," he said quietly. "Carrie Herring, age 34, currently living in Phoenix under the name Carrie Hudson. She's been divorced twice. Both ex-husbands died in suspicious circumstances. She's also got a son, 16-year-old Charles Hudson, who's been in and out of juvenile detention for assault and theft. She's building a crew. That's what I think. Carrie's smarter than Marcia, more careful. She's been laying groundwork for months, establishing new identities, building relationships with corrupt officials in different jurisdictions. But here's the thing that worries me most." Tyler pulled up surveillance photos on his screen. "She's been in contact with some of Julius Flynn's old associates. People who weren't caught in the FBI sweep." Hector studied the images. Carrie Herring was attractive in the same calculated way as her sister, the kind of woman who could manipulate lonely men with practiced ease. But there was something harder in her face, more predatory. "What's her endgame?" "Best guess. She wants to establish herself as Marcia's heir, legal guardian for Emma, access to the offshore accounts, continuation of the Black Widow operation in a new territory. Over my dead body. That's exactly what I'm afraid she's planning." The piano music stopped abruptly. Emma had been listening, despite Hector's attempt to shield her from the conversation. "Daddy," she said quietly, "is the bad lady's sister coming to hurt us?" Hector closed the laptop and knelt beside his daughter. Emma, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Some bad people might try to find us, but I want you to remember something important. You're safe. I will never let anyone hurt you. Do you understand? Yes, Daddy. But what if they're smarter than the other bad people? Then I'll have to be smarter than them. Emma nodded solemnly, then surprised him with a question that showed how much she'd grown. Do you need help? What do you mean? I mean, maybe I can help catch them. I'm really good at remembering things, and I notice stuff that adults don't notice. Hector was torn between pride and terror. His 7-year-old daughter was offering to help him hunt killers. It was both inappropriate and exactly the kind of clarity he needed. Tell you what, he said finally. If you notice anything strange, anyone watching us, anyone asking questions about us, you tell me immediately. But otherwise, you let me handle the bad people. Deal. Deal. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Hector reopened his laptop and studied everything Tyler had compiled on Carrie Herring. The woman was definitely building towards something: new identities, financial preparations, networking with criminal contacts. And her interest in Emma was unmistakable. But Carrie Herring had made the same mistake as her sister. She'd underestimated her target. Hector opened a secure communication channel and began typing. Tyler, I need everything you can get me on Carrie Herring and her son. Financial records, travel patterns, known associates, criminal contacts. I also need surveillance on their current location. You planning a preemptive strike? I'm planning to end this permanently. Marcia was content to wait for opportunities. Carrie seems more aggressive. That makes her more dangerous, but also more predictable. What do you need from me? Backup, intelligence, and clean extraction routes. Carrie's going to come for Emma eventually. When she does, I want to be ready. Copy that. I'll have a full workup within 24 hours. Hector closed the laptop and checked on Emma one more time. She was sleeping peacefully, her stuffed rabbit clutched tightly in her arms. The mountain air coming through the window was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of snow and pine. Tomorrow, he would begin planning the final elimination of the threat to his daughter. Carrie Herring thought she could step into her sister's shoes, continue the family tradition of predation and murder. She was about to learn that some prey fought back, and when they did, the hunter could become the hunted. Hector settled into his chair by the window, watching the moonlight on the snow-covered peaks. Somewhere out there, Carrie Herring was planning her next move. But Hector had something she didn't: the absolute certainty that he would do anything, sacrifice anything, become anything necessary to protect his daughter. The war Marcia had started was about to end. Permanently. Chapter 8. The Final Hunt. Carrie Herring arrived in Aspen 3 days later, traveling under the identity of Catherine Hoffman, a wealthy widow looking for investment properties in the ski resort town. Tyler's surveillance network picked her up at the airport, traveling alone but maintaining regular contact with unknown parties via encrypted messaging. She's good, Tyler admitted over their secure call. Professional surveillance detection, clean identity documents, cash payments for everything. This isn't her first time hunting. Hector watched the surveillance footage from his cabin office while Emma played in the snow outside. Carrie looked exactly like what she was pretending to be: an elegant, well-dressed woman with the kind of casual confidence that came from money. But Hector could see the predator beneath the facade, the way her eyes constantly scanned her surroundings, cataloging threats and opportunities. Where's she staying? The St. Regis Presidential Suite. Paid for 2 weeks in advance. She's already started asking questions at the front desk about local families with children, specifically mentioning she's looking for investment opportunities in family-friendly neighborhoods. She's hunting for Emma. Gets worse. I've identified at least 3 known associates who've arrived in town over the past week. They're staying at different hotels, but they're definitely working together. Tyler's screen showed photographs of the other arrivals. A man in his 30s with the lean build of a professional fighter, a woman who could have been Carrie's sister with the same predatory beauty, and an older man whose expensive suit couldn't hide the prison tattoos on his neck. Professional crew, Hector observed. Carrie's not playing games. There's something else. I hacked into Carrie's encrypted communications. She's not just planning to grab Emma. She's planning to eliminate anyone who might interfere with her custody claim. Meaning me. Meaning you, me, anyone who knows the truth about Marcia's operation. Carrie wants a clean slate, which means no witnesses to her sister's crimes. Emma's laughter carried through the window as she built a snowman in the front yard. The sound was pure joy, untainted by the darkness that surrounded their lives. Hector had promised her they could start fresh in Colorado, but the past was catching up with them faster than he'd hoped. "What's the timeline?" he asked. "Based on their behavior patterns, I guess they'll move within 48 hours. Carrie's been scouting the area, learning your routines, identifying vulnerabilities. Her people have been positioning themselves at strategic points around town. Then we end this tonight." Tyler's face showed surprise. "Tonight?" "Hector, this isn't some street thug we're dealing with. Carrie's got a professional crew, probably military or intelligence training. We need time to plan. We need time to die if we let them make the first move," Hector interrupted. "Emma's safety isn't negotiable. These people kill children for convenience. I won't give them the opportunity." Emma knocked on the office window, gesturing for him to come outside. Hector held up one finger, indicating he needed another minute. "What do you have in mind?" Tyler asked. "Something they won't expect. Carrie's been studying me as Thomas Mitchell, suburban security consultant. She doesn't know who I really am, what I'm really capable of. You're talking about going full operator. I'm talking about eliminating a threat to my daughter. Permanently." Tyler was quiet for a long moment. "Okay, what do you need?" "Clean identities for Emma and me after this is over. Somewhere they'll never find us. Already prepared. Montana ranch, completely off-grid, no paper trail. Equipment. I can have a full tactical package to you within 2 hours." "Do it." Hector ended the call and went outside to join Emma in the snow. She'd built an impressive snowman, complete with stick arms and a carrot nose. "What do you think, Daddy?" "I think it's perfect, sweetheart. Are we going to have to leave him behind?" The question caught Hector off guard. Emma had an uncanny ability to sense when their lives were about to change. "Maybe," he admitted. "Would that be okay?" Emma considered this seriously. "I guess so. We can always build new snowmen wherever we go." "That's right. We can always start over." "Daddy, are the bad people close?" Hector knelt beside his daughter, meeting her eyes. "Yes, baby. They're very close. Are you going to stop them like you stopped the other bad people?" "Yes. Will you come back to me?" The question pierced him more deeply than any wound could have. Emma wasn't asking if he would win. She was asking if he would survive. "Always," he promised. "I will always come back to you." That evening, after Emma was asleep, Tyler arrived with a tactical package that would have impressed a special forces unit. Night vision equipment, suppressed weapons, communications gear, and something that made Hector smile grimly: explosive charges. "You planning to blow something up?" Tyler asked. "I'm planning to send a message. Carrie Herring thinks she's hunting a suburban dad and his traumatized daughter. She's about to meet Staff Sergeant Hector Nicholson, psychological operations specialist." "What's the play?" Hector spread out a map of Aspen, marking the locations where Carrie's people were positioned. "Simultaneous elimination. We take them all out before they can coordinate or escape. All 4 of them. In one night. All 4 of them. No survivors, no witnesses, no loose ends." Tyler studied the map. "It's doable, but barely. Timing will have to be perfect. Then we'd better be perfect." As they finalized their plans, Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Daddy, I had a bad dream." Hector immediately went to her, lifting her into his arms. "What about, sweetheart?" "The bad lady was trying to take me away from you. She said she was my family now." "That's not going to happen." "I know, because you're stronger than all the bad people." Emma's simple faith in him was both humbling and terrifying. In a few hours, he would test that strength against professional killers who wanted to destroy his family. Failure wasn't an option. "Daddy, when you go fight the bad people tonight, can I give you something?" "What's that?" Emma ran to her room and returned with a small wooden soldier, one of the toys from their old life. "This is for Luck. He's really brave like you." Hector took the toy, feeling its weight in his palm. Such a small thing, but it carried the love and trust of the most important person in his world. "Thank you, baby. I'll bring him back to you." "Promise." "Promise." 3 hours later, Hector and Tyler moved through the aspen night like shadows, carrying Emma's wooden soldier and the absolute certainty that some sins could only be paid for in blood. The final hunt was about to begin. Chapter 9. Blood in the Snow. At 2:30 a.m., Aspen was a picture of winter serenity. Snow fell gently through the amber streetlights, muffling sound and creating the kind of postcard scene that drew tourists from around the world. But beneath the peaceful facade, death was stalking through the shadows. Hector moved through the St. Regis Hotel with the silent precision of his military training. Tyler had created a diversion at the front desk, a story about a suspicious package that drew security away from the elevators. In the chaos, Hector slipped past the cameras and made his way to the presidential suite. Carrie Herring was alone, exactly as Tyler's surveillance had predicted. She sat at the suite's dining table, studying photographs of Emma and floor plans of their cabin. The photos were taken with a telephoto lens from various angles, showing Emma playing, walking to the school bus, building her snowman. A predator cataloging her prey. "Hello, Carrie," Hector said quietly. Carrie spun around, her hand moving instinctively toward a weapon hidden beneath the table. But Hector was already there, his suppressed pistol aimed at her center mass. "Don't," he advised. "I'd hate to make this louder than necessary." Carrie's composure was impressive. Instead of panic, her face showed calculation, already working on ways to turn the situation to her advantage. "Thomas Mitchell, I presume? Or should I call you Hector Nicholson? You can call me the man who's going to make sure you never hurt another child. I'm not here to hurt Emma. I'm here to save her from a killer." Hector almost smiled. Even facing death, Carrie was working her manipulation tactics. "Save her from who?" "From you. Do you think I don't know what you did to my sister? What you did to Vincent and Julius? You're a monster, Hector. Emma deserves better than a father who tortures people in warehouses. Your sister was planning to murder my daughter. Vincent and Julius had already killed 3 children. I stopped them. You destroyed my family." "No," Hector corrected. "I cleaned up the mess your family made. The question now is whether you're going to continue the family tradition or end it here." Carrie's eyes flicked toward the table where her photographs lay scattered. Among them, Hector could see detailed surveillance notes, Emma's daily routine, the security weaknesses of their cabin, even contingency plans for disposing of bodies. "You were never going to take custody of Emma," Hector realized. "You were going to kill her too. Emma's a liability. She knows too much about what Marcia really was. In a few years, she might start asking uncomfortable questions. So you plan to eliminate her." "I plan to clean up loose ends, just like you're trying to do now." The conversation was interrupted by Tyler's voice in Hector's earpiece. Package 1 delivered. Moving to package 2. Translation: Tyler had eliminated the first of Carrie's associates. 3 more to go. "Your crew's dying tonight," Hector informed Carrie. "One by one, your people are being removed from the equation. Soon, you'll be alone. You can't kill all of us. We're professionals. So am I." Carrie's facade finally cracked, showing the desperation beneath. "What do you want? Money? I have access to millions in offshore accounts. We can make a deal. I want you to never exist. I want Emma to grow up without looking over her shoulder. I want the Herring family line to end tonight. She's my niece. I have rights. You have nothing." Hector cut her off. "You're a predator who kills children for convenience. You don't get rights." Carrie's hand moved again toward her hidden weapon, but Hector was ready. The suppressed pistol coughed once, and Carrie Herring's career as a Black Widow came to an abrupt end. "Package 4 down," Hector reported into his comm status report. "Packages 2 and 3 eliminated. Clean extraction in progress." "Copy. Heading home." Hector gathered Carrie's surveillance materials and her communications equipment, ensuring no evidence of their Colorado location would survive. Within minutes, the presidential suite looked like the scene of a robbery gone wrong. No indication that Emma Nicholson had ever been targeted. The drive back to the cabin took 30 minutes through winding mountain roads. Hector used the time to process what they'd accomplished. Carrie Herring and her crew were dead, the immediate threat to Emma eliminated. But more importantly, they'd broken the cycle. The predatory family that had killed dozens of people over the years had finally met their match. Tyler met him at the cabin with extraction vehicles and new identity documents. Montana Ranch is ready. Clean slate. No paper trail, surrounded by friends who ask no questions. What about loose ends? Marcia's trial will proceed without Carrie's interference. Vincent and Julius are going to die in prison. Cancer, heart attacks, whatever passes for natural causes in federal custody. The corrupt officials are all serving time or dead. It's over Hector. Hector checked on Emma one last time before they left Colorado. She was sleeping peacefully, her stuffed rabbit in one arm and the wooden soldier he'd returned to her in the other. For the first time in months, her face showed no trace of fear or anxiety. "Time to go, sweetheart," he whispered, gently waking her. Emma's eyes opened immediately, alert and ready. "Did you stop the bad people?" "Yes, baby. I stopped them all." "Good. Are we going to the new place now?" "We're going to the new place. Somewhere with horses and wide, open spaces, where you can learn to ride, and we can watch the sunset every night." "Will there be other kids there?" "There will be other kids. Good kids with good families. You'll make friends and go to school and have sleepovers and all the things normal kids do." Emma smiled, the first completely carefree smile Hector had seen from her since that terrible night when she'd come home with blood on her knees and terror in her eyes. "I'm ready, Daddy." As they drove away from the cabin in the pre-dawn darkness, Emma fell asleep in the back seat, finally feeling safe enough to let her guard down completely. In the rearview mirror, Hector watched the last remnants of their old life disappear behind the mountains. The radio played soft country music as they drove toward their new home. Tyler followed in a separate vehicle, ensuring their route was clean and unmonitored. And somewhere behind them, the snow continued to fall on Aspen, covering all traces of the violence that had ended there. Emma would grow up now. She'd go to school, make friends, learn to trust people again. She'd never have to know the full extent of what her mother had planned for her, or the length her father had gone to protect her. The nightmares would fade, replaced by dreams of horses and wide skies and all the possibilities that lay ahead. And Hector would watch over her, the guardian angel who'd emerge from the darkness of his military past to ensure his daughter could step into the light of a normal future. The wooden soldier sat on the dashboard, a small reminder that sometimes the good guys win, not through the corrupted justice system that had failed so many victims, but through the ancient law that said parents protect their children by any means necessary. As the sun rose over the Montana plains, Hector allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The war was over. The enemy was defeated, and his daughter was free to be a child again. Justice, it turned out, wasn't about courts and lawyers and legal proceedings. Justice was about ensuring that good people could sleep safely at night, knowing that those who would harm them had been stopped permanently. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Life. Garrett Reeves stood in his corner office on the 32nd floor, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a chessboard. At 42, he commanded respect in boardrooms and fear in back alleys, a duality few knew existed. His steel-gray eyes, scarred hands hidden beneath expensive Italian suits, and the slight limp from Kandahar told stories he never shared with his family. To the world, Garrett was a successful security consultant whose company, Ironclad Solutions, protected Fortune 500 executives and their families. What they didn't know was that his methods often ventured into gray areas that would make conventional security firms uncomfortable. His military background in Delta Force had taught him that sometimes protecting good people meant doing terrible things to bad ones. His phone buzzed with a text from his wife, Bridget. Running late again. Don't wait up. Hugs and kisses. Garrett stared at the message, his jaw tightening. 3 years ago, he would have believed it. 3 months ago, he might have questioned it. Today, he knew it was a lie. Bridget thought she was clever, but she'd forgotten she'd married a man trained to notice when people were lying, cheating, or planning something deadly. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd spent 15 years protecting strangers from threats they never saw coming, while a threat had been growing in his own home. His assistant, Ruby, knocked and entered. "Mr. Reeves, your son's school called. Connor's been in another fight." Garrett sighed. Connor had been acting out for months, angry, withdrawn, getting into trouble. At 15, the boy was already showing signs of the Reeves temperament: observant, protective, and utterly unforgiving when betrayed. "What happened this time?" "Someone was talking about you and Mrs. Reeves." Connor didn't appreciate the comments. Garrett's blood chilled. If other people were talking, it meant Bridget's affair wasn't as discreet as she thought. In a small community like theirs, secrets had a way of becoming public entertainment. "Cancel my afternoon. I'm picking him up." The drive to Connor's prep school gave Garrett time to think. Bridget had been different lately, distant, secretive, always on her phone. She'd started working out obsessively, buying expensive lingerie that never made it into their bedroom, and volunteering for charity events that seemed to require overnight trips. But Garrett hadn't survived 2 tours in Afghanistan by acting on suspicion alone. He needed proof, and he needed a plan. Connor was waiting outside the principal's office, his knuckles bruised, his uniform disheveled. The boy had inherited his father's build and his mother's cunning, a dangerous combination. "Ready to go?" Garrett asked. Connor nodded, not meeting his eyes. They drove in silence until Connor finally spoke. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "If someone betrayed you, someone you trusted completely, what would you do?" Garrett glanced at his son, seeing something dark in the boy's eyes that reminded him of himself at that age. "Depends on the betrayal." "What?" Connor stared out the window. "Just wondering." That night, Garrett found Connor in the garage, methodically cleaning his mountain bike chain with the same precision Garrett had once taught him to clean weapons. The boy worked with focused intensity, as if the repetitive motion could quiet whatever storm was building inside him. "Connor." His son looked up, and Garrett saw something that made his chest tighten. The boy knew something that was eating him alive. "Whatever you're carrying, son, you don't have to carry it alone." Connor's hands stilled on the chain. For a moment, he looked like he might speak. Then he shook his head and returned to his work. "I'm fine, Dad." But Garrett knew his son was anything but fine. And as he watched Connor work, a terrible understanding began to form. The boy's anger, his protectiveness, his questions about betrayal. Connor had discovered something. Something about Bridget. That night, as Bridget slipped into bed beside him, smelling of unfamiliar cologne masked by too much perfume, Garrett made a decision. He would find out what Connor knew, and then he would decide what to do about it. Because if there was one thing Delta Force had taught him, it was that the most dangerous enemies were the ones who slept in your own bed. Chapter 2. Sins of the Mother. Connor sat in his father's study at 2 a.m., staring at the photos spread across the mahogany desk. His hands shook as he picked up each image. His mother with a man he didn't recognize, kissing in restaurant parking lots, entering hotels, lying naked in unfamiliar bedrooms. 3 weeks ago, Connor had been looking for his mother's car keys to move her Mercedes out of the driveway when his basketball rolled under her car. Reaching for it, his fingers had found a small magnetic box attached to the undercarriage. Inside was a GPS tracker and a micro SD card. The tracker had led him to addresses across the city. The SD card contained hundreds of photos and videos, all automatically uploaded from cameras his father had installed months ago. Connor realized his father already knew. The study door opened silently. Garrett entered, unsurprised to find his son there. "How long have you known?" Connor asked without looking up. "For months." Garrett poured himself a whiskey and offered Connor a Coke. "How long have you known?" 3 weeks. Connor's voice cracked. "Why haven't you done anything?" Garrett sat across from his son, studying him carefully. "Because I'm not just planning to catch them, Connor. I'm planning to destroy them. And that takes time." Connor looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "Your mother thinks she's having a simple affair with Trevor Walsh. She thinks she's clever, sneaking around, planning to divorce me and take half of everything I've built." Garrett's voice was calm, almost conversational. What she doesn't realize is that Trevor isn't just some investment banker she met at the country club. Garrett pulled out a thick file and slid it across the desk. Trevor Walsh, former Navy SEAL, dishonorably discharged for selling weapons to insurgents in Iraq. He spent 2 years in Leavenworth before being released on a technicality. He's been targeting wealthy wives for 5 years, convincing them to leave their husbands and wire him money from joint accounts. Connor's eyes widened as he flipped through the file. "Mom's is Mark, one of them. He's got 3 other women on the hook right now." Garrett's smile was predatory. "But your mother doesn't know that. She thinks she's special. She thinks they're going to run away together to his beach house in Costa Rica." "How do you know all this?" "Because I've been hunting him for 18 months. One of my clients hired me after Trevor destroyed her family. By the time I was ready to move on him, I discovered he'd targeted Bridget." Garrett's jaw tightened. That made it personal. Connor processed this information. "So what's the plan?" "You're 15, Connor. You shouldn't be part of this." "I'm already part of this." Connor's voice hardened with determination that reminded Garrett painfully of himself. "She's my mother, and she's destroying our family. I want her to pay." Garrett studied his son for a long moment. The boy had already been forced to grow up too fast. Protecting him from the truth wouldn't change what had happened, but it might rob Connor of the closure he needed. "Trevor's planning something big," Garrett said finally. "Tomorrow night, they're going to try to kill me." Connor's blood ran cold. "What?" "They've been slowly poisoning my insulin. Not enough to kill me, just enough to make me sick and disoriented. Tomorrow, they're planning to stage a car accident. Make it look like I had a diabetic episode and crashed." Garrett showed Connor a small vial of clear liquid. "This was in my insulin pen. Industrial-grade antifreeze, almost undetectable." "Jesus, Dad, Trevor's done this before. Insurance money is easier than divorce settlements, and widows are more sympathetic than divorcees." Garrett's eyes turned arctic. "But they made one crucial mistake." "What?" "They assumed I wouldn't know. They assumed I was just another Mark, another trusting husband who would never see it coming." Garrett's smile was terrifying. "They have no idea who they're trying to kill." Connor felt something shift inside him, a cold, calculating anger that felt inherited. "What do you need me to do?" The next morning, Bridget hummed while making breakfast, her phone buzzing constantly with texts she thought Garrett couldn't see. She'd been careful to delete them, but she didn't know about the sophisticated surveillance software Garrett had installed on her phone months ago. "I might be late tonight," she said, kissing Garrett's cheek. "Charity committee meeting." "Of course," Garrett replied, injecting just the right amount of resigned acceptance into his voice. "Connor and I will probably grab dinner and catch a movie." "Sound perfect." Bridget's smile was bright and false. "You two have fun." As she left, Garrett caught Connor's eye. Phase 1 was about to begin. Chapter 3, The Trap Springs. The restaurant parking lot was nearly empty at 8 p.m. when Garrett and Connor finished their dinner. They walked toward Garrett's black BMW, Connor's nervous energy barely contained. "Remember," Garrett said quietly, "everything depends on timing." Connor nodded, his hand hovering over his phone. They'd rehearsed this moment for hours, but knowing his mother was planning to murder his father made his stomach churn with acid. As they approached the car, Connor suddenly grabbed his father's arm. "Dad, let's not take the car. Let's take a taxi." Garrett frowned, playing his part perfectly. "Why?" Connor looked serious, his eyes scanning the parking lot with paranoid intensity. "You'll see, just get out, please." The urgency in his son's voice was convincing, partly because the boy's fear was real. Even knowing this was a trap, Connor couldn't shake the terror that something might go wrong. Feeling uneasy, Garrett listened to his son and stepped away from the BMW. They walked to the restaurant's entrance, positioning themselves behind a concrete pillar with a clear view of the parking lot. Minutes later, 2 figures emerged from the shadows between parked cars. Bridget, wearing dark clothing and latex gloves, approached the driver's side while Trevor moved to the passenger side. They worked quickly and efficiently, Trevor attaching something to the brake lines while Bridget connected a device to the car's onboard computer system. Garrett's blood turned to ice. not from surprise, but from the calculated coldness of watching his wife attempt to orchestrate his murder. Connor made a small sound beside him, and Garrett pulled out his phone. 911, this is Garrett Reeves. I'm at Romano's restaurant on 5th Street, and I'm watching two people sabotage my vehicle. I need police and bomb squad immediately. Connor filmed everything with his phone while Garrett continued talking to the dispatcher, providing detailed descriptions and real-time updates. Trevor's device was more sophisticated than Garrett had expected. Not just brake tampering, but a complete system override that would allow remote control of the vehicle. They're finishing up, Garrett reported. The woman is... Jesus Christ, that's my wife. His acting was flawless, conveying exactly the right amount of shock and betrayal. Connor had to admire his father's ability to sound devastated while his eyes remained coldly calculating. Trevor and Bridget slipped away into the darkness just as police sirens became audible in the distance. They'd timed their escape perfectly, but they had no idea they'd been recorded from multiple angles by cameras Garrett had positioned around the parking lot weeks ago. The next hour was a carefully orchestrated performance. Police found the brake tampering, the computer override device, and traces of explosive residue that Trevor had planted to ensure the car would catch fire after the crash. The bomb squad confirmed that Garrett and Connor would have died within minutes of starting the vehicle. Detective Angela Morrison, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, took Garrett's statement while Connor sat nearby, still shaking with adrenaline. Mr. Reeves, do you have any idea who might want to hurt you? Garrett hesitated convincingly. I run a security company. We deal with some unsavory characters. But this level of sophistication... He paused, as if a terrible thought was occurring to him. Detective, I need to ask you something, and I hope I'm wrong. Go ahead. My wife has been acting strangely lately. Staying out late, being secretive. And my son... He looked at Connor. Tell her what you told me. Connor played his part perfectly. I think Mom's having an affair. I've seen her with someone, but I wasn't sure if I should say anything. Detective Morrison's expression sharpened. Do you have any evidence of this affair? Garrett reluctantly handed over a tablet containing a carefully curated selection of photos and videos, enough to establish Bridget's infidelity and Trevor's identity, but not enough to reveal the full extent of his surveillance operation. We'll need to bring your wife in for questioning, Morrison said after reviewing the evidence. And we'll put out a bolo for this Trevor Walsh character. As the police finished their investigation, Garrett allowed himself a small smile. Bridget and Trevor thought they were hunting him, but they'd walked directly into his trap. They'd committed attempted murder in front of multiple cameras, left physical evidence, and provided Garrett with the perfect justification for everything that was about to happen. Connor looked up at his father as they waited for their ride home. What happens now? Now. Garrett's smile turned predatory. Now, they learn what happens when you try to kill a Reeves. But this was only the beginning. The legal system would give Bridget and Trevor a few years in prison at most. Garrett had something much more permanent in mind. As they drove home in a police cruiser, Garrett's phone buzzed with a panicked text from Bridget. Where are you? Why aren't you answering? Is everything okay? He showed the message to Connor, who shook his head in disgust. Even now, she was still lying, still playing the concerned wife while hiding the fact that she just tried to murder them both. Should we respond? Connor asked. Not yet, Garrett replied. Let her panic. Fear makes people stupid, and I need her to make a few more mistakes before this is over. Because while Bridget and Trevor had failed to kill him tonight, Garrett Reeves was just getting started. Chapter 4. The Hunter Becomes Hunted. Bridget paced their bedroom at 3 a.m., her phone clutched in her trembling hands. 12 missed calls to Garrett, 15 texts, and no response. Trevor had assured her the plan was foolproof. A simple car accident, diabetic complications, no questions asked. Her phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Mrs. Reeves? This is Detective Morrison with Metro Police. I need you to come down to the station immediately. What's wrong? Is my husband? Your husband is fine, ma'am. But we need to discuss an incident that occurred tonight involving your vehicle and an attempt on your husband's life. The phone slipped from Bridget's hand. They knew. Somehow impossibly they knew. At the police station, Bridget sat across from Detective Morrison, her lawyer David Klein beside her. On the table were photos, clear, high-definition images of her and Trevor sabotaging Garrett's car. Mrs. Reeves, can you explain why you were in the Romano's parking lot tonight, tampering with your husband's vehicle? I don't know what you're talking about. Morrison slid another photo across the table. This is you connecting a device to your husband's onboard computer. The device was designed to override his braking and steering systems remotely. Bridget's face went white. That's impossible. I was at home all evening. We have video footage from multiple angles, ma'am. We also have your phone's GPS data showing you were at that location from 7:45 to 8:20 p.m. Klein leaned forward. Detective, my client isn't saying another word until we review all the evidence. That's your right. But you should know, we've also arrested Trevor Walsh. He's already talking. The lie hit Bridget like a physical blow. Trevor would never betray her. They were in love. They had plans. But as the interrogation continued, doubt began to creep in. The police knew too much. They had too much evidence. And where was Trevor now? Meanwhile, Garrett stood in his basement workshop, methodically cleaning his pistol. The police had done their job perfectly, but Garrett wasn't relying on the justice system to deliver satisfaction. Connor found him there at dawn, still awake, still planning. Dad, the news is saying Mom and Trevor are both in custody. Good. Garrett's voice was emotionless. That gives us time to prepare the next phase. What next phase? Garrett looked up from his weapon. The courts will give them 15 to 20 years, maybe less with good behavior. That's not justice, Connor. That's not enough. Connor felt a chill run down his spine. What are you planning? Your mother chose her side when she decided to kill me. Trevor chose his when he decided to target my family. Garrett's eyes were cold as winter steel. I'm going to destroy them both, and everyone who helped them. Over the next few days, as media coverage of the Black Widow plot dominated local news, Garrett began implementing a plan he'd been developing for months. He'd known this day would come, and he'd prepared accordingly. The first target was Trevor's operation. Garrett had identified the other 3 women Trevor was manipulating, wealthy, lonely wives who thought they'd found true love. Using his security company's resources, Garrett began feeding information to their husbands, providing evidence of Trevor's criminal history and his plans to rob them blind. Within a week, Trevor's entire network collapsed. His victims' husbands, armed with Garrett's evidence, moved to protect their assets and their families. Trevor's offshore accounts, his fake businesses, his escape routes, everything was systematically exposed and destroyed. But that was just the beginning. Bridget's bail hearing became a media circus. Her family hired the best criminal defense attorney money could buy, but they hadn't counted on Garrett's connections in the legal community. Every lawyer they approached found their caseloads mysteriously full. Every expert witness they tried to hire suddenly became unavailable. Connor watched his father work with a combination of awe and fear. Garrett moved through the shadows of legitimate society like a shark through dark water, using favors owed, secrets collected, and fear carefully cultivated to bend the world to his will. How do you know all these people? Connor asked one evening as Garrett finished a phone call that had apparently just cost Bridget's defense team their forensic expert. 15 years in the security business teaches you things, Garrett replied. Everyone has secrets, Connor. Everyone has something they'd rather keep hidden. The trick is knowing which secrets to collect and when to use them. But Garrett's real masterpiece was more personal. While Bridget sat in county jail, convinced Trevor would rescue her, she had no idea that Trevor was receiving daily visits from a fellow inmate who worked for Garrett. Every conversation was recorded. Every plan was reported. Every moment of Trevor's desperation was cataloged for future use. By the end of the first week, Trevor had revealed everything: his real name, his criminal history, his other victims, and most importantly, his backup plans for escaping prosecution. He'd also revealed something else. Bridget hadn't been his only target in the family. Trevor had been planning to kill Connor too, making it look like the boy had discovered the affair and been eliminated to keep him quiet. When Garrett learned this, something cold and final settled in his chest. Trevor wasn't just a predator who'd targeted his wife. He'd planned to murder Connor. That changed everything. That night, Garrett sat Connor down for a conversation that would define the rest of both their lives. Son, I need you to understand something. What your mother and Trevor tried to do, what they planned to do to you, that can't be forgiven. Ever. Connor nodded, his jaw set with the same implacable determination his father wore. I want you to make me a promise, Garrett continued. Promise me that no matter what happens next, no matter what you see or hear, you'll remember that they chose this path. They chose to try to destroy our family. I promise, Dad. Good. Garrett's smile was terrible and final. Because tomorrow, we're going to show them what happens when you betray a Reeves. The legal system had been just the opening move. Now the real game began. Chapter 5, Blood Money. Trevor Walsh sat in his county jail cell, staring at the letter that had been slipped under his meal tray. The writing was precise, military neat, and it made his blood run cold. Mr. Walsh, by now you've realized that your situation is more complicated than you anticipated. I know about Sarajevo. I know about the arms dealing. I know about Sarachun. You have 48 hours to decide. Cooperate with me, or spend the rest of your very short life looking over your shoulder. Choose wisely. Gr. Trevor's hands shook as he reread the letter. Sarachun had been a loose end from his military days, a CIA asset he'd sold out to insurgents for $50,000. She'd died screaming in a Baghdad basement, and Trevor had thought that secret was buried with her. Apparently, Garrett Reeves had other ideas. Meanwhile, across town, Bridget sat in her own cell, receiving a visitor she hadn't expected. Connor approached the reinforced glass partition, his expression unreadable. Mom. Connor, sweetheart, thank God. I've been so worried. This is all a terrible mistake. No, it's not. Connor's voice was calm, almost adult. I know what you did. I saw you tamper with Dad's car. Bridget's face crumpled. Honey, you don't understand. Your father isn't who you think he is. He's dangerous. He's what, Mom? A man who trusted his wife not to try to murder him. The accusation hung in the air between them. Bridget reached toward the glass, tears streaming down her face. Connor, please. I love you. I would never hurt you. But you would hurt Dad. And Trevor was planning to kill me too. Bridget's face went white. What are you talking about? Connor pulled out a tablet and showed her surveillance footage from one of Trevor's meetings with another criminal associate. On the video, Trevor was clearly explaining how he planned to eliminate the kid after the husband was dead, making it look like a home invasion gone wrong. He was going to murder me, Mom, and you gave him the keys to our house. The truth hit Bridget like a physical blow. She'd trusted Trevor completely, believed every lie he'd told her about their future together. She'd never questioned why he needed so much information about Connor's schedule, about the family's routines. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear to God, I didn't know. But you didn't care enough to find out. Connor's voice was ice cold. You were so busy planning to kill Dad that you never bothered to protect me. As Connor left the jail, Bridget collapsed on her cot, finally understanding the full scope of her betrayal. She not only tried to murder her husband, she'd unknowingly signed her son's death warrant. That night, Garrett received a call from Trevor's cell. I'll cooperate, Trevor said without preamble. What do you want? Everything, Garrett replied. Every name, every account, every detail of every operation you've run in the last 5 years. And I want information about who else knew about your plan to target my family. I worked alone. Bullshit. Someone gave you inside information about my routines, my security, my medical condition. Someone helped you identify my wife as a target. Garrett's voice was deadly quiet. I want names, Trevor. All of them. Over the next several days, Trevor provided a detailed confession that went far beyond the attempted murder. He revealed a network of corruption that included a nurse at Garrett's doctor's office who'd provided medical information, a country club employee who'd been passing along gossip about wealthy members' marriages, and a private investigator who'd been conducting surveillance on potential marks. But the most damaging revelation was about Bridget herself. She hadn't been the innocent victim of a master manipulator. She'd been an active participant in identifying and planning Garrett's murder. The recorded phone calls Trevor provided showed Bridget suggesting the insulin tampering, researching the best locations for staged accidents, and even scouting backup murder methods in case the car crash failed. She'd wanted Garrett dead, and she'd been willing to help plan his murder down to the smallest detail. Connor listened to the recordings in his father's study, his face growing harder with each revealed betrayal. She really hated him, Connor said finally. She hated what I represented, Garrett corrected. Security, stability, responsibility. She wanted freedom, excitement, danger. Trevor offered her all of that. And now, they're both going to learn that actions have consequences. The final piece of Garrett's plan began with a simple phone call to Trevor's former commanding officer, a general who'd been looking for Trevor since his disappearance 3 years earlier. It turned out Trevor had stolen more than just weapons in Iraq. He'd also made off with $2 million in reconstruction funds and the classified locations of several CIA safe houses. The military wanted Trevor back. Badly. Within hours of Garrett's call, federal marshals arrived at the county jail with transfer orders. Trevor was about to face a military tribunal for treason, theft, and the murder of Sarah Chun and 6 other CIA assets. The last thing Trevor saw before being dragged away was Garrett standing in the jail's parking lot, watching with cold satisfaction as justice finally caught up with him. Bridget's situation deteriorated just as quickly. The evidence Trevor had provided implicated her in conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and accessory to theft. Her bail was revoked, her assets were frozen, and her high-powered legal team suddenly found themselves facing federal prosecutors with unlimited resources and an airtight case. But Garrett wasn't finished. Not even close. Because while the law would handle their crimes, Garrett Reeves was about to deliver something far more personal. The complete destruction of everything they'd ever cared about, everyone they'd ever loved, and every dream they'd ever held. The game was entering its final phase, and Garrett Reeves had never lost a game that mattered. Chapter 6. The Sins of the Father. 3 months after the arrests, Garrett sat in his lawyer's office reviewing the divorce papers with surgical precision. Every asset, every account, every piece of property was being transferred to trusts that Bridget could never touch, even if she somehow avoided conviction. This is extremely thorough, his attorney Marcus Hoffman said, reviewing the documents. She'll have no legal claim to anything acquired during the marriage. Good. Garrett's voice was flat. What about her family? That's where things get interesting. Marcus pulled out another file. Your friend in the FBI was very helpful. Bridget's brother Dale has been running a money laundering operation through his construction company. Her sister Patricia has been filing fraudulent disability claims for years. And her father, Marcus paused dramatically. He's been evading taxes on offshore gambling winnings to the tune of $3 million. Garrett smiled coldly. Bridget's family had always looked down on him, treating him like hired help despite his success. They'd seen him as beneath their precious daughter, a rough soldier who'd gotten lucky in business. Soon they'd understand exactly who they'd been dealing with. How long before the indictments come down? 2 weeks. The IRS moves fast when they smell blood in the water. Connor walked into the office, his school uniform replaced by dark clothing that made him look older, harder. At 15, he'd already developed the cold analytical mind that ran in the Reeves bloodline. Dad, we have a problem. Garrett looked up sharply. What kind of problem? Mom's been making phone calls from jail. She's trying to convince people that you're the real criminal, that you framed her and Trevor. Who's she calling? Uncle Dale, Aunt Patricia, some reporter from Channel 7. Connor's expression was grim. She's also been telling people that you abused her, that she was scared for her life. Garrett felt something cold and final settle in his chest. Even now, facing life in prison, Bridget was still lying, still manipulating, still trying to destroy him. She's not going to stop, Connor said quietly. Even if she goes to prison, she'll keep trying to hurt us. I know. Garrett's voice was barely above a whisper, which is why we're going to end this permanently. Marcus cleared his throat uncomfortably. Gentlemen, I think I'll step out for some coffee. After the lawyer left, Garrett turned to his son. Connor, what I'm about to tell you can never leave this room. Do you understand? Yes, sir. There are problems that the legal system can't solve. There are threats that prison can't neutralize. Garrett's eyes were like chips of ice. Your mother has made it clear that she'll never stop trying to destroy us. That makes her a permanent threat to our family. Connor nodded slowly. What are you going to do? What I should have done months ago. Garrett pulled out a secure phone, one of several he kept for off-the-books business. I'm going to call in some favors. The first call went to Luis Ramirez, a former Army Ranger who now ran a private military company specializing in problem resolution for corporate clients. The second went to Dr. Amanda Foster, a psychiatrist who'd worked with Garrett on several high-security cases involving dangerous criminals. By evening, the framework was in place. Bridget would suffer a series of mental breakdowns in prison, brought on by carefully administered drugs that would leave no trace in her system. She'd become paranoid, delusional, eventually completely divorced from reality. Trevor, meanwhile, would face a different fate. Military prison was notoriously dangerous for traitors, and accidents happened all the time. A slip in a shower, a fall down some stairs, a fight with the wrong inmates. Any number of things could happen to a man who betrayed his country and gotten fellow soldiers killed. Is this justice, Dad? Connor asked as Garrett finished his final phone call. No, son. This is survival. Garrett's expression was carved from stone. They tried to kill us both. They would have succeeded if we'd been less careful, less prepared. Now, they're going to pay the price for underestimating a Reeves. But even as Garrett set his final plan in motion, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was crossing a line he'd never crossed before. In the military, enemies were clearly defined. In business, threats were obvious. But this was his wife, Connor's mother, the woman he'd once loved enough to build a life with. That night, as Connor slept, Garrett stood in his study looking at their wedding photo. Bridget had been beautiful that day, radiant with happiness and hope for their future together. Where had that woman gone? When had love turned to hate so complete that she'd try to murder him? His phone buzzed with a text from Luis. Package will be delivered as discussed. ETA, 72 hours. Garrett stared at the message for a long time, his finger hovering over the delete button. Once he replied, there would be no going back. Bridget would die in prison, and it would look like a complete mental breakdown followed by suicide. Trevor would die even sooner, the victim of a prison riot that would leave no witnesses and no questions. But as Garrett hesitated, another message arrived, this one from an unknown number. Stop this now, or I'll tell the FBI everything. Somehow, impossibly, Bridget had gotten word of his plan. She was threatening him, even now, even for behind bars. Garrett's moment of doubt evaporated like morning frost. He typed a single word in response to Luis, confirmed. Then he turned off the phone and went to check on Connor. His son was sleeping peacefully, safe in his own bed, protected by a father who would do anything to keep him that way. In 72 hours, Bridget and Trevor would be dead, and the threat to his family would be eliminated forever. Garrett Reeves had never been a man who forgave or forgot, and he was about to remind the world why that was a very dangerous thing to overlook. Chapter 7. The Final Gambit. Trevor Walsh's body was found in the exercise yard of Fort Leavenworth at 6:15 a.m., killed by a makeshift blade that had punctured his carotid artery. The official report blamed a conflict with other inmates over a gambling debt. No witnesses came forward. No one asked too many questions. Garrett received the news while having breakfast with Connor, the secure phone buzzing once with a simple message. Package delivered. Dad. Connor looked up from his eggs. Everything okay? Everything's perfect, son. Garrett deleted the message and returned to his coffee. Just business. Across town, in the county jail's medical wing, Bridget sat in a padded cell, staring at the walls with eyes that no longer focused properly. The psychiatric drugs Dr. Foster had arranged to have added to her food had done their work efficiently. Bridget's grip on reality had deteriorated so rapidly that even hardened corrections officers were disturbed by her condition. She spent her days talking to invisible people, claiming that Garrett was watching her through the walls, insisting that Connor was in danger from shadowy government agents. The official diagnosis was severe paranoid schizophrenia brought on by the stress of her criminal prosecution. Her family's attempts to visit were denied on medical grounds. Her lawyer's efforts to communicate with her were hampered by her inability to form coherent sentences for more than a few minutes at a time. To the outside world, Bridget Reeves had suffered a complete mental breakdown, brought on by guilt over her crimes and the realization that she'd lost everything she'd ever cared about. But late at night, in her few moments of clarity, Bridget knew the truth. Garrett was destroying her methodically, clinically, using resources and connections she'd never imagined he possessed. She tried to tell the doctors, tried to warn the guards, but her words came out as paranoid ramblings that only reinforced their diagnosis. The final blow came when Connor visited her for the last time. He sat across from her in the visiting room, watching as she struggled to maintain focus long enough to speak. "Connor," she whispered, gripping the table with white knuckles. "You have to listen to me. Your father, he's not who you think he is. He's dangerous. He's what, Mom?" Connor's voice was calm, almost gentle. "A man who protected his family from people trying to kill them? No, you don't understand. He's done things. Terrible things. He's killed people." Connor leaned forward, his eyes cold as Arctic ice. "Good." The single word hit Bridget like a physical blow. She stared at her son, seeing Garrett's ruthlessness reflected in the boy's face. "Connor, please. I'm still your mother." "No," Connor said quietly. "You were my mother. But that woman died the night you tried to murder my father." He stood to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Mom, Trevor's dead. Dad wanted you to know." Bridget's scream of anguish echoed through the visiting room as Connor walked away without looking back. That night, as Bridget sobbed in her cell, she finally understood the full scope of Garrett's revenge. He hadn't just destroyed her life. He'd turned her own son against her. He'd taken everything she'd ever loved and twisted it into a weapon aimed at her heart. And he wasn't finished. The next morning brought news that Bridget's entire family had been arrested in coordinated federal raids. Her brother Dale was charged with money laundering and racketeering. Her sister Patricia faced federal fraud charges. Her elderly father was being audited by the IRS for tax evasion and would likely spend his remaining years in federal prison. The media, fed carefully leaked information by Garrett's contacts, painted the whole family as a criminal enterprise that had been operating for years. Bridget's affair and murder plot were just the latest in a long line of illegal activities. Her mother, the only family member who wasn't facing charges, suffered a massive stroke when FBI agents raided her home. She died 3 days later without regaining consciousness. Bridget learned about her mother's death from a news report playing in the common area. She collapsed, screaming, clawing at her own face until guards restrained her and added another note to her psychiatric file. Patient shows increasing signs of self-harm. Recommend maximum security protocols. Meanwhile, Garrett stood in his study, reading police reports and medical evaluations with clinical detachment. Every piece of his plan had fallen into place with mathematical precision. Trevor was dead. Bridget was destroyed mentally and would likely spend the rest of her life in psychiatric care. Her family was in ruins. Connor found him there, standing over the evidence of their complete victory. "Is it over?" the boy asked. "Almost." Garrett turned to face his son. "There's just one more thing to take care of." "What's that?" Garrett pulled out a final file, this one containing information about Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the physician who'd been treating Garrett's diabetes. She'd been the one who'd provided Trevor with information about Garrett's medical condition, enabling them to poison his insulin with antifreeze. Dr. Mitchell thought she was just helping a concerned friend gather medical information, Garrett said. She had no idea she was enabling an attempted murder. But she violated doctor-patient confidentiality, and that kind of betrayal can't go unpunished. Connor frowned. "What are you going to do to her?" "Nothing permanent. But she's going to lose her medical license, her practice, and her reputation. By the time I'm finished, she'll never work in medicine again." "Dad," Connor hesitated. "When does it stop?" Garrett looked at his son sharply. "What do you mean?" "The revenge. The destruction. When do we stop punishing people?" For a moment, Garrett felt something like doubt flicker in his chest. But then he remembered the sound of Bridget and Trevor tampering with his car, remembered the antifreeze they'd put in his insulin, remembered Trevor's plan to murder Connor. "It stops when everyone who betrayed us has paid the price," Garrett said finally. "It stops when the world understands that you don't cross a Reeves family and walk away." Connor nodded slowly, but something in his expression troubled Garrett. The boy was learning lessons about power and revenge, but he was also learning about the cost of such knowledge. That night, as Garrett made his final phone calls to destroy Dr. Mitchell's career, he wondered if he was creating a monster in his own son. But then he reminded himself that Connor needed to be strong, needed to be prepared for a world where enemies could come from anywhere, even from inside your own family. The world was a dangerous place, and mercy was a luxury the Reeves family could no longer afford. Chapter 8: Blood and Ashes. 6 months later, Garrett stood in the cemetery where they'd buried Bridget's mother, watching workers lower another casket into the frozen ground. Bridget had died in her sleep 3 days earlier, her heart finally giving out after months of psychiatric medication and psychological torture. The official cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest brought on by severe depression and anxiety. Only 5 people attended the funeral: Garrett, Connor, 2 corrections officers who'd been assigned to escort the body, and a priest who'd never met the deceased. Connor stood beside his father, wearing a black suit that made him look older than his 16 years. The boy hadn't spoken since learning of his mother's death, hadn't shown any emotion beyond a slight tightening around his eyes. "How do you feel?" Garrett asked quietly. "Empty," Connor replied. "I thought I'd feel something. Satisfaction, sadness, anger. But there's nothing." Garrett understood. Revenge was supposed to provide closure, but sometimes it just left you hollow. They'd won completely, destroyed their enemies utterly, but victory felt strangely anticlimactic. "That's normal," Garrett said. "The first time is always difficult." Connor looked at his father sharply. "The first time? You think your mother and Trevor were the first people who tried to destroy me? The first enemies I've had to eliminate." Garrett's voice was matter of fact. "Son, I've been fighting wars since before you were born. Some of them were official, with uniforms and flags and medals. Others were private, personal, necessary. The revelation hung between them, like smoke from a funeral pyre." Connor suddenly understood that his father wasn't just a successful businessman with military training. He was something far more dangerous, a predator who'd learned to hunt in corporate boardrooms and suburban neighborhoods. "How many?" Connor asked. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." Garrett studied his son's face, seeing something that reminded him of himself at that age. A hunger for truth, no matter how dark. 17, Garrett said finally. "Over 25 years. Some were enemy combatants in Afghanistan. Others were threats to clients I was protecting. A few were personal." Connor processed this information with the same cold, analytical mind he'd inherited from his father. Did they all deserve it? They all made the choice to threaten something I was protecting, whether they deserved it. Garrett shrugged. "That's a question for philosophers. I'm a soldier." They drove home in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The house felt different now, larger, emptier, free of the poisonous presence that had infected it for so long, but also somehow diminished, as if the very act of winning had cost them something essential. That evening, as they sat in the study reviewing documents from Bridget's estate, Connor made a decision that would change everything. "I want to know," he said suddenly. "Know what?" "Everything. How you do what you do. Who you really are. Where a family really is." Garrett set down his whiskey and studied his son carefully. "Why?" "Because I'm a Reeves. Because this is my inheritance, isn't it? Not just the money and the business, but this." Connor gestured to the files containing evidence of their destroyed enemies. "This is what we are." "Connor, you're 16. You should be worried about homework and girls and college applications." "I stopped being a normal 16-year-old the night Mom tried to kill us both." Connor's voice was steady, resolute. "You've already taught me that the world is full of predators, that family can betray you, that mercy is weakness. Now, teach me how to fight back." Garrett felt something twist in his chest, pride mixed with sorrow, satisfaction tinged with regret. He'd wanted to protect Connor's innocence, but that innocence had died along with Bridget. "All right," Garrett said finally, "but understand this. Once you start down this path, there's no going back. Once you learn what I'm going to teach you, you'll never be able to pretend the world is safe again. I don't want to pretend anymore." Over the next several hours, Garrett began Connor's real education. He showed him the hidden room behind the study's bookshelf, filled with weapons, surveillance equipment, and files on dozens of potential threats. He explained the network of contacts he'd built over 2 decades. Soldiers, spies, criminals, politicians, all bound to him by favors owed or secrets shared. He taught Connor about leverage, about how information was more valuable than money, about how fear was more reliable than loyalty. He showed him how to identify threats before they materialized, how to gather intelligence without being detected, how to destroy an enemy so completely that even their allies would abandon them. This is the real family business, Garrett explained as Connor examined an encrypted hard drive containing blackmail material on 3 senators and a federal judge. Security consulting is just the cover. What we really do is protect ourselves and our interests by any means necessary. Connor absorbed every lesson with the intensity of a born predator learning to hunt. He asked sharp questions, identified weaknesses in theoretical scenarios, suggested improvements to Garrett's methods. By dawn, father and son had reached an understanding. Connor would finish high school, would go to college, would learn to present a normal face to the world. But underneath that facade, he would be preparing to inherit Garrett's true legacy, the knowledge and connections and ruthless pragmatism necessary to survive in a world where your own family might try to kill you. One more thing, Garrett said as they finished. We never discuss your mother again. She made her choice, she paid the price, and now she's gone. We don't mourn enemies. Connor nodded. What about forgiveness? What about it? Do we ever forgive anyone? Ever? Garrett's smile was cold and final. Forgiveness is for people who can afford to be betrayed twice. We're not those people. As the sun rose over their kingdom of secrets and silent graves, Garrett Reeves and his son stood together, bound by blood and shared knowledge of what it took to survive when mercy was weakness and trust was a luxury they could never afford. The game was over. They had won. But in the shadows of their victory, new enemies were already stirring, drawn by the scent of power and the promise of revenge against the family that never forgave and never forgot. The next war was already beginning. Chapter 9. Legacy of Ice. 2 years later, Connor Reeves sat in his freshman dorm at Harvard, reading a letter that had been slipped under his door. The paper was expensive, the handwriting elegant, and the message was signed with a name that made his blood run cold. Connor, my name is Victoria Walsh. Trevor was my brother. I know what your father did to him. I know what he did to your mother. I know what he's been teaching you. This isn't over. Consider this your only warning. Connor destroyed the letter immediately, but not before memorizing every detail. Then he called his father using one of the encrypted phones Garrett had given him for emergencies. We have a problem, Connor said without preamble. What kind of problem? Trevor had a sister, Victoria Walsh. She knows about us. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Garrett's voice, cold and calculating. Tell me everything. Connor relayed the contents of the letter while simultaneously accessing the university's security system through a backdoor Garrett had installed months earlier. Victoria Walsh appeared on multiple cameras around campus. A woman in her 30s, attractive, well-dressed, moving with the confident grace of someone who'd been planning this moment for months. She's been watching me, Connor realized. Probably since Mom died. Any indication she's working with others? Unknown. But Dad, she found me at Harvard. That takes resources, connections, intelligence capabilities. Or luck, Garrett said, but his tone suggested he didn't believe it was luck at all. That evening, Connor was studying in a library when Victoria Walsh approached his table. Up close, she was beautiful in the same predatory way Trevor had been handsome, all sharp angles and cold intelligence. Connor Reeves, she said, sitting down uninvited. You look just like your father. Ms. Walsh. Connor didn't look up from his textbook. I assume you didn't come here to discuss genetics. I came to give you a choice. Victoria's voice was soft, reasonable. Walk away from your father's business. Live a normal life. Go to college, get married, have children, die peacefully in your sleep. And if I refuse, then you'll join your father in hell. Connor finally looked up, meeting her gaze directly. My father taught me something about threats, Ms. Walsh. Never make one unless you're prepared to follow through immediately. Oh, I'm prepared. Victoria's smile was razor sharp. You see, Connor, while your father was busy destroying my brother and your mother, I was busy learning everything there is to know about Garrett Reeves. His businesses, his contacts, his methods, his weaknesses. She slid a tablet across the table. On the screen were photos of Garrett meeting with various criminals and military contractors, documents proving his involvement in arms dealing and political assassination, recorded conversations discussing bribes and blackmail. I have enough evidence to put your father away from multiple life sentences, Victoria continued. I also have the names and locations of 17 families who lost loved ones to Garrett's operations. They're very interested in meeting you both. Connor's expression didn't change, but his mind was racing. This woman had done in 2 years what most intelligence agencies couldn't do in a decade. She'd penetrated Garrett's security and gathered actionable intelligence on his operations. What do you want? Connor asked. Justice for Trevor, justice for your mother, and justice for every life your father has destroyed. Victoria leaned forward. I want Garrett Reeves to suffer the way his victims suffered. I want him to lose everything he cares about, the way Trevor lost everything. And me, you're a child who was raised by a monster. I'm willing to give you a chance to escape that legacy. Her voice softened slightly. But only one chance, Connor. Choose wisely. After Victoria left, Connor sat alone in the library for hours, processing what he'd learned. His father had made enemies, serious, dangerous, well-connected enemies who were now coming for revenge. The empire Garrett had built through violence and intimidation was about to face its greatest challenge. Connor could warn his father, could help him prepare for the coming war. Or he could walk away, disappear into the normal world Victoria Walsh was offering him. For the first time in 2 years, Connor Reeves faced a choice that wasn't predetermined by loyalty or revenge or family obligation. He picked up his phone and dialed Garrett's number. Dad, we need to talk. I'm listening. Victoria Walsh has everything. Names, dates, evidence. She's got 17 families lined up for revenge, and enough proof to put you away forever. Silence. Then, are you thinking of running, son? Connor closed his eyes, feeling the weight of inherited sin pressing down on him like a mountain. No, Dad. I'm thinking it's time to finish what they started. Good boy. Come home. We have work to do. As Connor packed his bags, leaving Harvard and the possibility of a normal life behind forever, he understood that this was what it meant to be a Reeves. You didn't get to choose your battles or your enemies. You didn't get to forgive or forget or walk away from the blood on your hands. You inherited the sins of your fathers, and you paid for them with interest until the day you died. But first, you made sure your enemies paid an even steeper price.